What do you wish that more people knew about the immigration and refugee crisis?
There is good people and there is bad people, and I don't think the good people have to pay for what bad people do, right? I don't think all
Hmm.
Latin people are bad or want to just cross the river to go to America, that's how I have been
Hmm.
feeling my whole life. Now I have a Canadian passport and I don't, but before that, that's every immigration officer was like asking me millions of questions and making me feel like I'm crossing the river here, right? I think that like not everyone is bad, not everyone is good, but we shouldn't be paying for what bad people are doing, and everyone deserves an
Hmm.
opportunity, right?
Maria is a Latin refugee woman whose story is a testament to the power of resilience and hard work. Originally from Venezuela, Maria emigrated to Canada as a refugee, seeking safety and a better life. Despite facing numerous challenges and navigating both cultural and language barriers as she transitioned to life in Canada, her determination and passion never wavered. Today, she works in advertising and also runs Milu, a successful small jewelry business in her local community. Oh, and one more thing. Hi, I'm Dami, and this is the More Than One Story podcast, a space to elevate the multifaceted identities of individuals by empowering them to break out of boxes and recognize that they are more than one story. Come curious, respectful, and ready to think critically. Join me in welcoming Maria Mendez. Can you tell us about your journey to becoming a Canadian citizen?
Yeah. I basically moved to Canada about 6.5 years ago. I came as a refugee, so as a refugee, it's a little bit easier than coming like through another process. At least it was for me coming from
Mm-hmm.
Venezuela. I applied for refugee. I was approved. I went to a hearing process. It was approved, and then after I would say a few months, I was able to apply for my permanent residence. It took about a year and a half to get my PR, and after that, I started the process to become Canadian. To be Canadian, you need 1,095 days in the country. So I had to wait
Mm-hmm.
a little bit to get those days. I decided to apply in the middle of the pandemic. It took about 2 years for me to start all this process and get everything ready. After 2 years, I was called to apply for the citizenship test. And then after a
Mm-hmm.
few months, I was called to be part of the oath ceremony. So in total, I will say it was about 6 years, but it wasn't too hard. Like as a refugee, you have your case. You show this case to immigration. They check if you need to go through a hearing process or if you don't really need it. And in my case, I needed. I had a lawyer. We went to the hearing. It was about 3.5 hours. They decided to open the doors of this country to me, so it was really easy after that. For me, it took
Yeah.
about 5.5 years, and I think it took that long because of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. So just to make sure that some of our listeners understand your context, can you share a little bit about why you left Venezuela? So I know, like you said, as a refugee, but some people might not know that. Could you give some context as to what's happening in Venezuela
Yeah.
that could help us understand better?
So right now, Venezuela is in the middle of a humanitarian crisis, economical crisis too, and
Mm-hmm.
political. We have, let's say, it's like a, I don't want to say a war, but it's a very intense crisis. It's been a while, and it's because of the current government. I can't remember my country previous to this government because I was very young, so I can't remember how was Venezuela at the time.
How old were you when you left
Uh,
or
I
started to
was
leave?
22 years old when I left the country. But
Okay.
since I can remember, my country has been in a crisis, economical, political. It's a little bit messy to be honest, and it's really hard to explain what's going on. But I don't know what to say.
Take your time. Don't worry.
Well, because of the crisis in Venezuela, and a lot of my family members, my friends, we decided to leave the country because we didn't see any opportunities for us there. And we also
Mm-hmm.
were not basically allowed to go against the government in any sense. We couldn't be part of protests or anything like that because they would put us in jail. And all I
Mm-hmm.
wanted was more opportunities in life and a free country, and a country where I know if
Mm-hmm.
I work really hard, I can get the things I want. And I knew that wasn't going to happen in Venezuela. After a while, I didn't feel safe there, and I think that was the main reason. Like safety wasn't part of my daily basis, to be honest. I decided to move to Canada after I finished university because my older sister lives here, and I
Okay.
think, well, I was told that if I was doing my immigration process through her, it will be a little bit easier. Yeah, I decided to move when I finished university because I didn't see any hope for me there, any opportunities.
Yeah. I can relate a little bit to your story because Nigeria is very similar to that. We also have like a mass migration of people leaving. I left when I was 16. I had a bit more opportunities to leave earlier than most people. So I left, I actually moved to the US first at 19 and then was there for 8 years and eventually to Canada in 2018. So I've been here for 5 years as well. Also became a citizen recently like you. But I can relate to I know. Woo, Canadian. But I can relate to the economic hardship of like you can protest and safety is an issue. Sometimes even like kidnapping is normal in Nigeria. So yeah, and there was I don't know if you're familiar with this, but there was something that happened in 2021 during the pandemic called End SARS in Nigeria. So it was basically the citizens were just protesting about the fact that they're getting harassed by the police. The police was supposed to protect them, but the police would literally stop you for something like, oh, you have an iPhone. How did you get that? Or you have a laptop, you must be rich. And they could detain you or they could take your car. So just like basic, just being a human being and you being harassed for that, even to the point of getting
Yeah,
killed. So people could get killed for just having an iPhone in
yeah.
Nigeria. So, and the government wasn't doing anything because it was basically the police was supposed to protect us, but that was happening. So there was a massive protest that happened in Nigeria and people were streaming it on Twitter. At some point, the government literally shut down the internet, they shut down the lights, and they started shooting
Oh my god.
citizens. That's
Yeah,
how
well,
bad it was. So I get where you're coming from. Like I left Nigeria too for the same reason. Like economically, there wasn't anything going on. There wasn't opportunities for us to grow. We travel abroad and we're doing well somewhere else in other countries. But in our own country, our government isn't investing in us. So I can imagine what that's like.
I feel you. Venezuela is the second country with most refugees in the world after Syria. Like this for a
Mm-hmm.
country that is so rich in natural resources, but so
Right.
corrupt, right? So I think that was my main reason. And I slowly saw my friends leaving, my family members, everyone was leaving the country because we didn't have opportunities, and it was a disaster. We couldn't find food. We didn't have electricity for hours, many hours a day. We didn't
Mm-hmm.
have access to a lot of like essential things. Yeah, the
Basics.
basics
Yeah.
in your
Mm-hmm.
life. So I realized that sadly, but that wasn't going to be for me. Like, yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
decided to move here.
That makes sense. Prior to that, as much as you can remember, can you share a little bit about what growing up was like for you when you were with your family? What
Well,
was
I
that
had
like?
a very like regular childhood. My dad died when I was really young, and it was mom and my two
Mm-hmm.
sisters and me. I'm the youngest one of three sisters. It was honestly pretty normal. Venezuela wasn't too bad at the time, so I think it was easier for my mom to like basically raise three kids by herself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to travel, going to school, share with my family, friends. I had a really regular childhood, nothing bad. But slowly with the time, the situation in Venezuela got
Mm-hmm.
really bad. That the hyperinflation didn't let us like just buy the regular things,
Oh,
and
that's a
we
thing.
yeah we were affected by this. My mom before was able to support us, but then slowly she wasn't able to do that anymore. So I think yeah, I think I had a really regular childhood. My teenage years were really good as well with friends. Nothing crazy. But slowly
Yeah.
when I was growing on, I was like, okay, this is getting bad. You see stuff on the news, on the internet, how other people are living their lives, and you're like, it doesn't seem like my country is like that. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
What would you say was the most difficult part of leaving your home country?
Ooh, about I will say my case when I moved to Canada, it was learning the language.
Oh, okay. So were you just you didn't speak English when
I
you
thought
came to
I did.
Canada?
I mean, I do
Oh,
understand
okay.
at some point, but I wasn't able to have a conversation with anyone, and I think that was also
Okay.
hard and intense part for me because,
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't. I mean, I came after refugee. I didn't have money. I had a job, but
Yeah.
how do you find a job without speaking the language of that country? I think
Which,
that was the
yeah.
most hard for me, but it took me about a year to feel comfortable and like
Hmm.
get into action to find a job and all these things. But definitely learning the language for me
So how many languages
too.
do you speak?
Spanish
Two. Okay. Spanish and
for
okay,
now.
English. Yeah, for now. Yeah, you can always learn more. So how would you say you coped with the challenges of adjusting to a new life and a new culture in
Well,
Canada, besides the
I
language
think
barrier?
Canada is a perfect country for immigrants. Everyone is different,
Hmm.
but they make you feel home. Like everyone is different. Everyone have different backgrounds, but they're like you. But at the same time, we're trying to adapt to this society and rules and everything. I think it was really hard for me because I'm coming from a really tiny town in Venezuela where everyone knows each other,
Yeah.
and we don't really know about other cultures, to be honest.
Right.
But yeah, I think Canada is a perfect place for that. You feel at the beginning I didn't feel like that, but slowly you see that everyone is so different that they make you feel home because you learn a lot about other cultures and other people too. And I really
Hmm.
like that about Canada.
Yeah. Okay. Would you say that at some point you felt homesick while you were going through this whole journey? And can you share a bit
Oh
about
my
that? What was
god,
that like
yes,
for you?
definitely. I would say the first 3 years for me were really intense because when I was in Venezuela, I finished university, I came here and I thought, okay, if I learn the language, maybe I can get a job in my field, right?
Hmm.
At all. So I had
Yeah.
million jobs
Yeah.
before my current role, but I think the most difficult part about apart from learning the language was okay. I would say the first 3 years were really intense because I didn't feel home at all. I
Hmm.
didn't feel like this was my place. I
Why didn't you
I,
feel
I
that
felt
way?
hopeless because it was really hard to find a job, but at the same time, I was trying to get that Canadian experience, that Canadian culture that I really needed. And I think that didn't make me feel like I was in the right place. And also homesick because, well, I miss my family so much, but also my friends. I think
Hmm.
friends make you feel like a little bit home too, right? And I think at the beginning,
Hmm.
I didn't have that. The first 3 years for me were really intense. And I tell this to my friends who are like moving to new places. The first 3 years, I will say they're very intense, but it will get better. It will get better for sure,
Hmm.
and it will be way better than you thought. At least that was my case. Every time I was feeling really sad and missing my family, I was just trying to like maybe get some Venezuelan food to feel home or like call my family. I FaceTime my family even today, like FaceTime every day how they're doing. And I think this type of communication makes you feel less homesick. But
Hmm.
yeah, definitely at the beginning it's gonna be hard, but it will get better for sure.
Yeah, I can relate to that because when I also moved, I moved from the US and I was thinking, okay, it's right there, like Boston, that's where I came from. I was like, oh, it's pretty close. Like, it shouldn't be too much of a problem. So, same thing for me too. Like, the first 3 months, I was like diving into networking and just like, all right, let's just go, let's just go. And people were like, you just literally moved to another country and you're acting like nothing happened. But I was like, oh, it's not a big deal. I've done this many times before. So, I moved. Canada is the fifth country that I'm living in. So, for me, it was like, oh, I'm used to this. But then halfway through, like, I think like about 3 months, I started feeling the homesickness. And it wasn't even like I was missing my family per se. It was just sort of like similar to what you said. It felt like I didn't feel settled here, like not having a job or like a proper job, at least, considering knowing what I was doing in the US before I moved here. The Canadian experience, friends as well. Like I had friends that I was talking to on phone, like in Boston and, other countries, but it wasn't
No,
the same. And, like, how they say like Canadians are
yeah, no, and
friendly and polite?
they really look
They are.
like welcome to say that, but it's not.
Yeah, they're welcoming, but it's not. I know. Okay, maybe you tell me what your view is on that, and I'll
No,
tell you mine afterwards.
I'm very grateful. Honestly, I never
Yeah.
felt like I wasn't part of the system, even though I wasn't really speaking
Hmm.
the language properly at the beginning.
Yeah.
But it's different. I think home is not. It's not like a space. It's more like I don't know, maybe
Hmm.
people around you, connections. I don't know how to describe
Right.
this, but it's,
Right.
it's completely different. They make you feel home, but this is not your home yet. It will eventually, but
Yet.
yeah.
No, I can relate to that too because it's really the people and the feeling for me that makes it feel like home. Because it's not about the location that I'm at; it's basically who's around me and how does that make the experience better as a result. So for me, it took me a while to make
Yeah.
friends. Like I had acquaintances, people that I said, "Oh, hi," and we hang out with them. Like it's still not the same. There's a level of depth
And
that's
I think
needed that I feel like
it
I
gets
wasn't
harder when
getting.
you get older, right? It's not like
Yeah, exactly. It's harder to make friends as an adult as well
yeah,
too.
but I think it's also
Exactly.
good. Like you get a little bit picky with the years because you know what you really need in your your life, which is good. But
Exactly.
it's a
Exactly.
completely different friendship. Like my friends from back home, it's a different feeling. I'm really grateful for the friends I have here. Like they make me feel home, but it's different.
Mm-hmm.
My friends from back home, they know my whole life, right? From like
Yeah, yeah.
babies at home.
I agree with you on that. Yeah, definitely similar experience. So you've been in Canada for 5 years now, you said, right?
Six and a half.
6 years
Yeah.
now? Okay. I know you touched on this a little bit at some point, but was there ever a time whereby you felt helpless or hopeless during your journey? Because you and I, we moved and we don't think about it too much like, oh, okay, I just moved for better opportunities. But for a lot of people, just traveling solo is a big deal for them. But we traveled solo because literally like things were bad. So you're not even thinking about, oh, how hard is it? Because you don't really have a choice. You just
Yeah.
have to move.
Yeah.
So, but despite that, there would have been time whereby you felt hopeless, like you mentioned at some point. Could you share a little bit more about
Yeah.
that, and how did you find the strength to keep
Yeah,
going?
well, I when I first moved, I told you I was looking for a job. I have a bachelor's degree in marketing, and I was looking for a job in marketing. Took me 4 years to find that, and I understand
Oh wow,
why
yeah.
now. I obviously needed some. Well, first of all, learn the language, get some Canadian experience,
Mm-hmm.
and then after a while, I think I felt hopeless because I didn't get what I wanted when I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I didn't want to wait, and I think that's how I felt hopeless. But I decided one day, okay, if this is not gonna be for me when I get my Canadian passport, I'll find another place somewhere where I can actually find do my profession and feel that I'm useless, that I'm that useful, right? Yeah, useful.
Useful, yeah. No worries. I know what you mean. Not
It took
useless.
me, yeah, it took me 4 years. I was working at the post office at the time. I had multiple jobs,
Mm-hmm.
but at the time I was working at the post office, and
You have to
yeah,
do what you have to do.
yeah, that's also part of moving to a new country. And
Mm-hmm.
I decided to go back to school because I thought if I don't go back and give me the opportunity to get this extra Canadian experience,
Mm-hmm.
maybe this is what I need. That's what I thought. Maybe this is all I need. So I
Right.
went back to school. I make sure to I took a program with a internship because I needed some extra experience, and I think that really helped me.
Mm-hmm.
After that program, that's when I got my first job in marketing in Canada. I think that was the whole journey. I'm still at that in that company, but now it's been a while since I got that job. But yeah, I think
Yeah. I wanna touch a little bit on something you mentioned earlier about you did not want to wait. Remember how you said you did not want to wait because of, I mean 4 years is a long time to get a job in the field that you were already working at.
I
So
know.
I don't think it's a question of you feeling like I don't think there's anything wrong with not wanting to wait. Like you should not want to wait because you were working in marketing and you have a bachelor's from Venezuela, it should
Yeah.
count. I kind of want to get your view on the Canadian experience part and maybe share a little bit about what you were doing in Venezuela in marketing, or if you just had a marketing degree. Maybe you can just start from there. And what are your thoughts on the Canadian experience for immigrants that are coming here? Because technically, if you're already doing what you're doing, why shouldn't that matter here?
Yeah, yeah, completely agree. Well, in Venezuela, I graduated. I created an agency with my friends. We at the time we were creating content for brands and services outside
Mm-hmm.
Venezuela. And I think when I moved here, I didn't want to wait because I thought, oh, I had this experience. I can find a
Right,
which
right.
I think I was wrong at the time. In my case, I'm not gonna say everyone because I came from a third world country, not English at all, maybe just not much experience, and I wanted everything like now. I think waiting that time
Mm-hmm.
make me realize that I needed to learn more, get more experience, get involved into the system. I know
Mm-hmm.
the Canadians experience can be a little bit annoying, but in my case, I think it was I
Mm-hmm.
needed that. I needed to get involved into the
Mm-hmm.
culture, like go back to school, all these things to feel more comfortable. I think I didn't have
Mm-hmm.
enough experience when I first moved, and I thought, oh, maybe I'll find a job. When I first moved here, I did a volunteer for a year and a half. I was doing like a volunteering marketing, unpaid. It was really
Mm-hmm.
tough. I was hoping.
Yeah. Did that count towards your experience in
I
Canada
think that
though?
didn't help at all.
Like
Honestly,
it
no.
didn't
I
help?
think what helped me was
Okay.
going back to school and get the
Okay.
certificate and get
Mm-hmm.
into the internship after that.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely that really helped me. Maybe for some
Yeah.
people, they don't really need that Canadian experience that everyone is talking about. But in my case, I think I needed to feel comfortable and to get all this, I would say, knowledge and experience that I needed because I was really young when I moved here. I was 22 years old. Like, yeah, no. In my
Yeah.
case, and I don't even remember how I was working back home now. Like, all I know right now is the Canadian
Yeah.
environment. environment, you know?
Yeah, I know what you mean. So I mean that sounds fair. Like sometimes like if you feel like you needed more experience, that makes sense. But the reason why I was asking that question is because there are a lot of people that come with tons of experience from other countries, and there's a Canadian experience barrier. So in your particular case, like you didn't speak English, understandable. You didn't have a lot of experience, understandable. But like I came from the US and I still had that Canadian experience barrier. And I'm like, are you
Yeah,
kidding
I
me?
know.
And I know a lot of people who have way more experience than me that are having to deal with that right now. And I think it's problematic. I mean, technically, it's illegal to discriminate based on you don't have a Canadian, like legally,
It
it's
is.
in the law. Companies still do that. Yeah, I think it kind of makes things a little bit harder for immigrants because, the idea is we're welcoming immigrants, but people cannot feel at home if there is no opportunity for them to integrate and actually feel like they can start their life. Because, like money is important. Like you need money to like survive in this country and economy. And yeah, I feel like there needs to be something there. Like maybe it has to do with like the perception of, because you can say US was third world country, but the US is not third world. And I know people come from Germany and the UK and they have the same issue.
I mean,
So
I think maybe it's just a culture, getting adapting to the new culture, and because
but it's not that different from other
well,
English
that's
speaking
true. That's true. I
countries.
can't.
Like it's not like the US is literally like
Well,
I'm like, shouldn't you be worried about the fact that I have more experience because I'm coming from
it
the
happened.
US?
It
You
happened.
know what I mean? I'm like, are you
I
kidding
know
me?
people.
Like they're way more
I know
advanced.
people who had to remove experience from their resumes because they were
Hmm.
overqualified for a lot of jobs.
Exactly. I did that too. I had to dumb some of my resumes down
Wow,
to
and
get
that's
some.
really tough. It wasn't
Yeah.
my case. I mean, I'm lucky in that sense. In that, but
Yeah.
I think for me, I needed that time. Maybe I waited for too long. 4 years is a very long time, but I think I was also waiting for my PR so I could apply to get this certificate and apply for OSAP, like
Mm-hmm.
the government loan in school.
What's OSAP? Oh, the
Yeah.
government loan. Okay.
So I think I was waiting for that as well because it was very expensive for me. So, but
Right.
in my case, I can't complain. I think that really helped me to understand how everything works in
Yeah.
the country.
How would you say your experience moving from Venezuela to Canada has shaped your identity and your sense of self?
I think it made me more human and to understand that there are a lot of different people in this world, a lot of cultures, religions, colors. Like for me, it changed me, but it did in a good way because I'm coming
Mm-hmm.
from a really small country and a really small town where everyone knows each other and they judge you, if you're different. And growing up, I didn't like that, but that's all I knew. I
Mm-hmm.
guess I didn't think it was
Right.
something different or something wrong. So moving to Canada, I think made me more human, made me more open, and I really like that. Like getting to know like different cultures and backgrounds, and like understand that we are all different, and that's okay. So I think,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it changed me in a good way.
Can you expand a little bit more on the human part? What does that mean? Like for you, what does
I
that mean to
think
you?
I don't know. I think I can be more empathetic. I can understand other people better. Again, I'm coming from a like very macho culture, and like people
Mm-hmm.
really judge you for what you're wearing or who you are or what you do, and I don't like that, and I don't think
Yeah.
that's correct. So it made me more human because I don't think here you realize that what there are many cultures. Like it's okay to be different. It's okay to think different, to like different things.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I really like that from in my experience from moving to from Venezuela to Canada. I think it changed
They're like
in a
more
good way.
open to
Yeah.
differences. I think I get a sense of what you're talking about because Nigerian culture is very similar in that sense of like, I guess maybe the difference is I won't really say that Canadians are not exactly judgy because I feel like human beings in
Yeah.
general are judgmental, can be judgmental. I think it's just like in our countries, they're very like, they'll show it to you, like they'll
Yeah.
tell you, like that you'll see it. They're not afraid to hide it. That's just a difference. But here it's a little bit like concealed. You don't see it. Like it's not like in
Yeah.
your face. But I can definitely see the part of them being more accepting of differences and, welcoming. Like at least a city like Toronto,
Yeah.
for example. I've heard that different parts of Canada are different. I mean, I haven't traveled extensively yet to know, but there are parts of Canada that are remote that, they also haven't visited or been to other places. So they're like in a village as well and they only know what they know. Well, a small
Yeah, I
town, I
think
guess, is more
it's that.
appropriate.
It's small.
Yeah.
And I was raised
Yeah.
there. My whole family is from the same place, and I
Yeah.
guess you see that is okay for people to do that. But then I
Mm-hmm.
moved here, and I'm like, well, that's not okay. And I feel like I didn't like that
Yeah.
anyway. I mean, it was part of I don't know, the environment, the people growing up. I just think it was a very good idea for me to move here and like getting to know different
Experience
people. Yeah,
something different.
yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, what is it like when you're around your family, like, or maybe when you interact with your friends who maybe might still think differently? What's that interaction like?
With my family, well, my family is really not very open-minded, but
No, I know. That's what I mean. Like, how do you, when you connect with them or go back or you're around them or visit or they visit, what's that
I think it
interaction like?
depends on the members of my family. My mom and one of my sisters are. I think slowly they understood that I don't like to be judged, but my other sister, she can be more like she can judge. So I
Yeah, like
was
in
a
your
little bit
face.
scared because I saw my family in December
After how many
6th.
years?
Yeah,
Oh wow.
and
Yeah, that's a
I
long
was
time.
scared
Yeah.
because I was telling myself they don't know who I am. They don't know why I like these things.
Right.
They don't, I don't know. Like my mom called me a few months ago. We had a call and I was like, oh, I'm gonna make this for dinner. And I told her, she said something about beef, and I'm like, no, mom, I haven't really eaten beef for the last 4 years. And she's like, oh, are you
Yeah.
vegetarian now? And I'm like, no, but I'm trying not to eat much.
A lot of red meat.
And I
Yeah.
thought, oh, she doesn't know who I am. So when I was getting ready
Yeah.
to go there, I was a little bit scared. But then I realized family is your family. That will
hmm
never change. And honestly, it was the same thing as 6 years ago. But I think they understand, they respect who I am, and different points of view that I have these days. And I think because I have them because I'm growing up, I grew up here as an adult alone, basically, and it's because of the
hmm
situation, the life happens, and I guess I had to move here by myself and do all these things. But I don't feel judged, and if I do, I put limits and I tell them. So
How does that go?
I
Putting
think
boundaries.
it's good. I think they know I'm changing. I'm a little bit different than a completely different human being than the person they knew when I was living there, right? So I think they respect that, and I like.
Yeah. So I'm asking because, it's something that I've also had to navigate of just like when you put your boundaries in place and there's differences and trying to find a way to like help them recognize that I'm not that same little girl
No,
anymore. I am
it's not
now,
gold,
I'm
and I like
older
these
and
things, and I don't like this, and I think this is great.
right.
I think, well, I go to therapy every now and then, and I think I
hmm
understood that, yeah, you can set up limits to make a relationship healthier, right? In my case,
Right.
if I didn't like how they were making me feel, set up some limits. Hey, I don't like this or this or this. So I think in my case, my family is pretty good with, yeah.
That's important. It's a good thing that you're doing that as well too. So in terms of what we mentioned earlier, like a lot of people are not very aware of what's going on in other countries and why people immigrate, like in terms of like refugee crisis and just immigration in general. Like there are people who are against it and there are people who are for it. In what way do you think Canadians could do better to support refugees and
Wow.
immigrants? So in terms of policy and also individual actions.
Wow.
So I know they do have some measures and they are welcoming, like, but in what ways do you think they can
Well, I
improve?
think, well, I feel really welcome here. Honestly, I can't complain about that. But
hmm
in my case, I struggle so much because I couldn't see my family in 6 years, and I think
Why
there
was
should be
that?
a way to fix that, right? In my case, was because well, my family, their visa expired, so it is a very long process in Venezuela to get a visa. The embassy is not there anymore. They need to go to another countries.
hmm
It's like a long process. And in my case, my family moved to Florida. When I moved
hmm
here, my visa got canceled, my US visa, because I applied for refugee, and that
Why did it
doesn't
get
match.
canceled?
I don't know. When Trump
What?
became president, that changed, and that
Oh,
was my
Trumpy, of
case. I
course.
know.
Okay,
So
same with me too. Yeah.
I know.
Okay.
My US visa got canceled, so my family moved to the US, and I couldn't really see him till I became Canadian because I went to apply for a visa, and they were like, nope,
Okay, you gotta cancel you.
bye,
Yeah.
get out of here. There should be other ways to, like, at least family can, like,
Be
be
unified.
together. I
Yeah.
mean, not live together, but at least see each other.
See
It
each
was really,
other.
really
Yeah.
tough. And I think it's just that borders, right? Like a lot of rules and a lot of stuff that we don't really understand. But
hmm
I think it will be a good idea to make something around that, like at least family members, For me, it was really tough not seeing my family in 6 years. That was very hard.
hmm
I think that was the hardest part of moving here.
Yeah, that makes sense, especially if you like been very close to them as well, and also like in collectivist societies like Venezuela and Nigeria, like
Yeah,
family is everything. Like family is very important. Versus here, it's like by myself, I'm independent, I'm individualistic. Don't call me all the time. You know what I mean? It's just like trying to merge those two cultures
yeah,
together.
I would love to.
Yeah.
I would love to help in a way that so people doesn't really have to go through this anymore. It's really hard to see your
Yeah.
loved one.
So for people who say there's too many people in the country, or even like the kind of things that were being said by Trump back then about the Mexicans bringing their rapists and everything, like So people who are for like, anti-immigration, what do you wish that more people knew about the immigration and refugee crisis?
There is good people and there is bad people, and I don't think the good people have to pay for what bad people do, right? I don't think all
Mm-hmm.
Latin people are bad or want to just cross the river to go to America, that's how I have
Mm-hmm.
been feeling my whole life. Now I have a Canadian passport and I don't, but before that, that's every immigration officer was like asking me millions of questions and making me feel like I'm crossing the river here, right? I think that like not everyone is bad, not everyone is good, but we shouldn't be paying for what bad people are doing, and everyone deserves that
Mm-hmm.
opportunity, right? And it's really hard. People
Mm-hmm.
they don't really know what's going on. I mean, they know what's going on in our countries, but they are not there. It's a very tough situation, and dude, we are just looking for better life and better opportunities. Like in my case, every time I was coming back from a trip, they make me feel like being a refugee was a really bad thing. They put me in
Mm-hmm.
another room and make me feel like, I don't know, I was doing something very illegal. And
Yeah.
some people are like me. I just came here to do the right thing and like looking for opportunities, right? So I think that's the thing. Like not like give opportunities to people, but not everyone is bad, not everyone is good, but the good ones shouldn't be paying for what bad people do, right?
Mm-hmm. So basically, like it's recognizing that while there's merit to this, there needs to be sort of like a system of checks and balances to make sure that you can filter, like have a background check of something or to like
Something like that. I
track.
mean, I'm not a politician, and I'm
Right, I know. Yeah,
um,
even politicians don't get it right. So,
yeah, no. But
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so what you said earlier about they know what's going on in our countries, but they should also remember that not everybody is good, not everybody is bad. So I want to highlight a couple of things. I feel like not everybody does know what's going on in our countries because living in the US and also living in Canada, like what I've seen for over a decade now is it's very easy to live in the bubble of your comfort and your privilege and not like why should I be bothered about what's going on in Nigeria? Like I'm fine. I'm good where I am. Like so I find that a lot of people in North America, I mean, I can speak about Europe as well too, but like in the West, you're not affected by that. Why should you care? Like the part where you say you need to care, like the caring part of it is doesn't really come easily to people if they've not experienced it. So like you've experienced it, I've experienced it. And even just like when you move to Canada, like going through the process of not having Canadian experience, taking you 4 years to do all of that, to where you are right now to actually having a job, it can be very easy to also forget that. The reason why I'm bringing that up is also is one of my friends is going through the Canadian experience situation right now. And I remember when I went through it back then, and she has like tons of experience as well. And I remember when I went through it back then too, it was the worst. And I was just like, oh, just keep applying. Like it's a numbers game. Like you'll get something very soon. But then I had some point I had to stop myself and realize like things are going well for me now. And I'm grateful for that. But like you also don't want to forget because that's where the humanity comes into play of not forgetting, but also finding a way to connect. But sometimes when you haven't experienced something, you have no point of reference. You can't really go back and say, oh, I know what that was like. So it's like you can have sympathy, but there's no empathy because it was never your experience. So like even just getting a Canadian passport, for example, like you talked about going through immigration and border patrol and all of that stuff that you had to deal with. For me, it was something similar as well, or even having to like get it. Like Nigeria's passport is just like nothing. Like it's just better to not have anything.
I feel
Sorry.
you.
Not sorry. It's like every single country I gotta get a visa for. But now I don't even have to worry about that anymore. It's such a privilege. But I feel like for people who are here, like or even when I was moving from the US to Canada, some people were like, oh, why are you going to Canada? Like it's
Oh,
crap. Like there's nothing there. And I'm like, well, yeah, you can speak.
right?
Give your passport to a Nigerian and then they can tell you how to use it because you clearly don't even know what you have because you don't appreciate what you have because you've never not had it. It's like being born like into like wealth and not knowing what it's like to work. Like you cannot possibly relate because that was never your experience. Experience was you've never suffered. So unless someone has gone through that, they cannot relate to it. So it's very easy to just snap and be like, oh, who cares? Well, yeah, that's because you've never had to suffer in that sense of being denied access to a country or to a location because of your passport. But once you're born into it, it doesn't really matter. So I feel like stories are important, which is why I'm doing this as well to like just like share stories and try to like humanize people and also like remind people of what other people go through. And of course, that wouldn't really like do it the same way an experience would do it, but it's the closest thing we can get. So I just wanted to touch on that a little bit based on what you said earlier about trying to get people to care, but like how does that happen? Like making that connection when you haven't really gone through it.
But I think people really connect. In my case, my friends, when I told them when I
Mm-hmm.
like how I came here and all my experience and everything, I think they didn't have a clue how I was before, and
Mm-hmm.
then they're like, wow, like now they know what it is. They have a friend who went through that, and like they're very welcoming. They're Canadians, of course, but they're very
Right.
welcoming. So I think, yeah, I think even though if you were born with privilege, you can, I don't know, there is a way to connect. My friends,
There's still a way to
yeah, I
connect,
feel
yeah.
like my friends really connect with me in that,
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on what kind of human being you are.
Depend.
But
I know, I know.
yeah, I think there is a way
Yeah.
to like letting people know what's going on, and I always try to share my experience and tell them, like, I mean, the way I came here was really tough, and
Right.
getting all the experience and getting where I am right now was really tough, but that made me a human, right? With people, I think it's important for people to like at least know a little bit about what's going on in the country and in the world. I can put it
Right. I think that's important. And it also helps because they're your friends. Because if you don't have someone that's close to you that you care about, if someone just said a story about, oh, this person is suffering, you're like, okay, I hope you feel better. But if it's someone that's close to you, you feel it a little bit more because you're like, oh, wow, I care about this person and I don't want them to go
yeah, but
through that.
also
So it definitely
I don't want
helps.
people to see me like, oh, poor Maria. Like,
No, yeah, it's not a
no,
sympathy thing for
I
sure.
want them
Yeah.
to be like, wow, she made it. It's possible, you can do it.
It's possible. That is true.
Yeah.
Is there any part of your story that you would change if you could?
Wow.
Like everything you've been
I
through?
don't think so. I don't think so because
Why
I
is that?
struggled at some point, but that made me the person who I am right now with the experience I have, and I don't think I would change that. I like who I am right now, and I
Hmm.
think that made me really stronger. I'm stronger, definitely.
Yeah.
So maybe not, but for me, I always thought about like why my family didn't move with. Maybe that would change that part, but I mean it happened.
Could they have moved with you though? Was it possible, like with the
I
immigration
think it
process?
was, but it's tough. My mom doesn't speak the language. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think she can survive this winter, to be honest.
Yeah.
No way. So I think it was
Yeah.
going to be really tough. It was tough for me, but can't imagine how intense could be for her. So no, I don't think so. She didn't want.
That's understandable.
I think it had to happen like that, like make me
Mm-hmm.
who I am right now. I really miss them
If
through
you
my
could, yeah.
process.
Yeah. How often do you get to see them now that you're a Canadian
Well, I
citizen?
saw them for first time over Christmas and New Year's, and I'm planning to see them for Mother's Day in May. So, I mean, not
Okay.
too often, but we're close now. They're in Florida. It's just like a 3-hour flight,
Okay.
so I'm
That's
trying
not
my
bad.
best
Yeah.
to go and see them.
Yeah. What does home mean to you now that you're settled in Canada and you're a citizen?
Wow. I don't know.
If you think about the concept of
Yeah.
home, because you've lived in more than one place now, so how would you describe home?
Wow. I'm trying to still figure it out where is my home, but I think Toronto makes me feel home sometimes. I just think I need little pieces
Mm-hmm.
of everyone here with me. I don't think I will move to another place right now. I feel like slowly
Mm-hmm.
being part of something. Home, I would say, it's not a place. I would say it's the people who you are with.
Mm-hmm.
It's that dish made by your mom or your favorite dish made by your parents, or I don't know. It's little things that reminds you to home. My mom sold our home in Venezuela a few weeks ago, and that made me really sad. Yeah, it was really intense. It
Yeah.
was something really sad, but and then
Yeah.
I realized, well, I have them. This is the place where I grew up. It's the place where I have a bunch of memories, but I can still make memories with
Mm-hmm.
them. Doesn't matter where. We had to leave our place. We had to leave our country, but I have them, and I'm very lucky to have them. So I think home is not a place. It's just the people who are you with, right?
I agree. So the podcast is called More Than One Story, and it's under the umbrella of the brand Taloje, which is a Yoruba phrase, which is Nigerian. That means "Who are you?" And from my story and my life experiences, I've come to the realization that human beings are complex. They are multifaceted and constantly becoming. And that's a story that I feel like a lot of people can relate to. The feeling that they're not one thing, but they identify as many things. So based on that context, what is one takeaway you'd like the audience to know about you that emphasizes your uniqueness? So in other words, what is your Taloje story?
Wow. Now you're making me think.
I want you to think.
Yes. What's my story?
Take your time, no rush.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm working on it, definitely, but I feel like slowly I don't know, I'm building something, I feel like I'm part of something in some sense. Like I came with $200 in my pocket Well, I'm healthy. That's amazing. But I have a nice job. I have a small business, which I never thought I would. I don't know who I am right now, but I'm working on it and I'm going to figure it out. And I know where I want to be. Definitely. I know this is a place where I can do that because I feel like Canada is a great place to, I mean, it's very cold. Don't get me wrong.
It's fine. You
It
can
is a
wear the
place with a
jacket.
lot
It's
of
not a problem.
at least for me, it's a lot of opportunities that I wanted at some point and I couldn't. And I'm very grateful that another country is giving me that. Maybe I don't know exactly who I am right now, but I know where I want to go, you know?
Yeah. And also with the question, I feel like none of us really has there's no clear definition of like, this is who I am. You're constantly changing, you're evolving. The person that you were last year is not the same person that you were this year. So there's that process of it's an evolution. Like, yeah. So part of, from what I can gather from your story so far, like you're resilient for sure. You've gone through a lot to get to this point. You believe in yourself. There's power in that. And that's part of who you are. Like who you are is what you're capable of doing. It's not like one fixed thing, you know, you're just this and that's it. Like you said, your family, they don't know who you are because the person that you were when you were there is not the same person that you are now 6 years later. So there's something to be said there about the fact that who you are, you could change in 5 years time. That's possible because that's the process of it. You're constantly evolving and changing all the time.
Yeah, no, I agree with that for sure.
Thank you so much for listening to this conversation. I hope you learned something new that can help you, or better still, have gained a new perspective on how to navigate your world. If you enjoyed this discussion, please share it with your friends, follow or subscribe if you haven't, and rate the show wherever you're listening, as this helps others to find the podcast. I'd also love to hear your thoughts on this episode. You can do that by responding to the poll question in the episode description section, or comment on the website at www.taloje.com/morethan1story, or on Instagram at Taloje, and that's spelled TALOJE, which is where the More Than One Story podcast is found. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.